now as we react to today's horrific attack on a Manchester synagogue. And Gideon Falter, the chief executive of the campaign against anti-Semitism, has released a blistering statement. It reads, today's attack was made inevitable by the radicalisation of Islamist extremism that have been allowed to spread by successive governments, which have ignored every warning and done practically nothing to tackle it. Now the blood of British Jews cries out from the ground. Those who were murdered today were simply going to synagogue to pray on the holiest day of the Jewish calendar. Their appeasement of extremists, especially those of the far left and radical Islamists, is what has made today's attack inevitable. Today, the blood of British Jews is on the hands of virtue-signalling politicians, police forces, universities and schools, the BBC and regulators like the Charity Commission. We need firm and urgent action on each of these fronts. Otherwise, it is inevitable that yet more innocents will be murdered on our streets. Well, joining me to discuss this is Stephen Silverman, the Director of Investigations and Enforcement at the Campaign Against Anti-Semitism. Stephen Silverman, welcome to the show. Thank you for your company on this truly dark day. May I ask you, when you specifically say there that politicians have blood on their hands, do you mean the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer?
Well, look, I think that in the coming days and weeks, when the reasons why this atrocity has happened are examined, it's important to ensure that some very tough realities and facts aren't buried in the weasel words, crocodile tears, and inevitable backside covering that will unfold. The government is complicit. The criminal justice system is complicit. Industry regulators are complicit. Universities are complicit. And our national broadcaster is complicit. All of them, every single one of them could have acted to put the brakes on this rising tide of hatred, which has resulted in the deaths of patriotic Britons who just happened to be Jewish. Instead, they either did nothing or worse, took action that actually inflamed it. They should hang their heads in shame and they need to bear the responsibility for what happened this morning.
Okay, Stephen Silverman, thank you for joining us on Yom Kippur. I know it's been a truly, truly dark day for you and the Jewish community, but thank you for sharing that statement with us and coming on the show tonight. I truly appreciate your time. Let's go live now to Crumpsall and speak to GB News reporter Anna Riley, who's there on the ground for us. Anna Riley, what's the latest down there as the community tries to come to terms with what's happened today?
A truly dark day, Martin, for the community, not just for the Jewish community, but for the whole community in Manchester, reeling here from yet another terror attack in this city. You may be able to see behind us that there is a cordon still in place where we are here. The road is still closed. Police presence remains in place as these investigations continue throughout the night. We heard earlier from the Greater Manchester Police as well as Scotland Yard as well that these investigations are still ongoing. We know that the suspect was shot at the scene. We do not yet know the suspect's name. We do not know his motivation. Police say that they are aware and that they will release his name in due course. But in terms of the community, we know that there's 4 people still in hospital, 2 people from the Jewish community tragically killed in this horrific incident. And speaking to people here, they've said that they don't feel safe. We've heard from the Prime Minister today. We've also heard from Andy Burnham. We've heard from the Home Office as well. We've heard from Shabana Mahmood that everything is being done to protect the Jewish community. But people here don't feel this. They say that on the holiest of days, Yom Kippur, that this could happen here in Manchester. And some of them were still scared as well that family members were involved in that incident. Luckily, it was such a quick response within 7 minutes of a call being made to police. They were on the scene. Things could have been a lot worse, but speaking to people here, they don't want division. They want the community to come together. They want safety, and they feel that this is yet just another blow to the community. They're looking for answers.
Ready for the latest from Crumpsall, the scene of today's incident. Coming up next, we'll have a response from my panel to that blistering statement from the campaign against anti-Semitism. They believe British politicians have the blood of Jewish people on their hands today. That's next. So we want to get some response now from my panel. We had a blistering statement read out by the campaign against anti-Semitism. We had Stephen Silverman on the show a short while ago. He said this: "Today, the blood of British Jews is on the hands of virtue-signalling politicians who have poured fuel on the fire of extremism." Very, very strong words. To get some reaction from my panel, I'm going to start with you, Maajid Nawaz.
Yeah, Martin, look, Mr Silverman mentioned the government's failure and the police's failure and the institutions. Let me talk about those first two, the government. Keir Starmer needs to recognise that his unilateral approach to the question of the Israel-Palestine conflict is in the way of the regional solution that President Trump's put forward, and he needs to seriously consider that now after this morning's events. The second point about the police. The police promised after Southport to be transparent about the suspects involved in such cases. Now, we all want to know what's gone on here, who's been involved, who's backing them, who's behind them. The police need to be transparent as soon as possible, with speed, so that the nation doesn't misunderstand exactly what's happened here.
Can I also quickly ask you about the allegation that the BBC's bias and their moral collapse has essentially turned them into spokespeople for Hamas?
Well, there is a danger that people in situations like this justify or excuse for, actions of Hamas. And let's make it very clear, Hamas is a terrorist organisation. Hamas, from its founding day till now, doesn't want peace, it wants war. And all of us need to recognise that you don't have to be supporters of Hamas to sympathise with the plight of the people in Gaza.
OK, let's get some reaction now from you, have a good Shaun Woodward. An astonishing outburst there on Yom Kippur. The blood of British Jews on the hands of virtue-signalling politicians.
Yeah, look, I understand people's very strong feelings right now, and I'm not in any shape or form going to be in the business of disagreeing with people. What I want to say is this. The first is that the blood today is on the hands of those who committed the violence, and that's unequivocal. Those people who committed the violence, they have their hands in blood. Those who are seeking a peaceful solution, those are the people right now who are really challenged. And I think in particularly these next few days, when it will be Hamas that is terrified of the success of this peace plan on the table, what politicians have got to do now is not weaken their resolve in finding a pathway to peace, but strengthen their resolve. Listen to people like Stephen who feel very intensely, of course, but what we've got to do right now is find every pathway to peace and not abandon it, because that would be the gift to the terrorists.
But it's naive to assume that today's violence happened in a vacuum. Stephen Silverman there
it doesn't happen in a vacuum.
Political backdrop, the protests
Martin,
on the streets, the police turning a blind eye,
but it's what
universities,
you do at these
schools who've tolerated incitement. The BBC, his words, not mine.
The pressure is intense right now, but the responsibility on those seeking a pathway to peace is not right now to buckle, it's to actually get stronger.
Sir Michael Ellis.
I think we have to, frankly, take a step back and look at the state of this country. I actually agree with what Mr Silverman said at the campaign against anti-Semitism. And they're at the coalface here, right? They are dealing with this. This has been blanket coverage news today, but every day of every week for the past 2 years, that charity has been at the coalface of dealing with raw anti-Semitism that's been taking place on the streets of this country and not getting an awful lot of publicity. We've seen episodes. I had, when I was in Parliament, until last year, I had students, Jewish students, coming to see me because they were being subjected to anti-Semitism in universities. Our universities have failed to deal with that. And I think that, frankly, the Jewish people would be entitled to imagine that other minorities would not be so treated. They would have their issues resolved. Jewish people feel that their students are being subjected to anti-Semitism in universities, which they are. There is anti-Semitism episodes that we've heard about in the National Health Service, so people feel that they are concerned about going to get medical treatment. There are reports that Jews feel they have to remove religious symbols because they're worried about that. Our courts have not functioned as I would have hoped that they would in order to protect the Jewish community. And I'm someone who spent my entire life in the legal system, in the criminal justice system. I was called to the bar in 1993. And I'm not happy with the way the courts have dealt and the legal system has dealt with anti-Semitism in this country. So the reality is I can understand why that charity issues a statement like that on the holiest day of the Jewish calendar after a terrorist attack on the soil of this country.
Maajid Nawaz, if I could ask you to reflect upon the final sentence of this blistering statement. The Campaign Against Anti-Semitism claim we need firm and urgent action on all of these fronts. Otherwise, it is inevitable that yet more innocents will be murdered on our streets.
Unfortunately, that sounds to be the case. It does sound like there will be more attacks unless we deal with these issues. Anti-Semitism has been rising. All forms of hatred and extremism have been rising, and they are rising because the enemies of peace know that the way they can stop peace is to continue to fuel the hatred. It hurts me and pains me to hear from the former Attorney General that the Jewish students don't feel comfortable showing off their religious symbolism on campuses. That hurts me and pains me, having been a student on these campuses. In fact, I went to SOAS, where one of the 7/7 bomb attacks went off on Russell Square and Tavistock Square. These are personal events to all of us. We've lived through them. We've got to dial it down in this country. We've got to resume the dialogue and conversation across communities that we know Britain is so good at.
Can I quickly ask you, we've got about 20 seconds, 30 seconds left. The British Muslim community needs to stare its own problems in the face and account for them.
Well, I would agree with that, something I've been trying to do for a long time. I would say it's a lot better now. This attacker appeared to have some form of fake or real suicide belt on him. That's reminiscent of ISIS-style attacks. We don't know who he is just yet, but of course, since the defeat of ISIS, British Muslims have become a lot more vocal on terrorism. If I have anything to do with it, they'll become a lot more as well.
Gentlemen, thank you. An excellent, thought-provoking show. We have to leave it there. Maajid Nawaz, Shaun Woodward and Sir Michael Ellis, thank you very much for your company tonight. And thanks to you all out there on a dark day, Yom Kippur, as the sun sets on a dark day in British history.